Hey guys, this is Orivis Bernal from oakcravesweb.com, and I'm going to show you how to make a web page. First things first, let's open up a text editor. You can use Notepad. I'm going to use Notepad++. Alright, with Notepad++, you can set the language you're going to use. To make a web page, everything's done with code. And the perfect code for web pages would be HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Sorry about that, guys. Hypertext Markup Language, or HTML, is what is used as pretty much the backbone of all websites and pages. All those cool things you see on a website, those images, videos, all that is done with HTML. I'm just going to be placing some basic tags, which is what these are known as. Let's go for our closing tag as well, and let's save it. You can save it anywhere. Let's go ahead and save it in Documents. Or desktop would be even better. Let's go create a folder, and let's call this test. And let's go ahead and open it. And in this file, test. As you can see, by sending links to HTML, when you hit save, you'll notice this right here. It's already set up. So when you hit save, it should already have the .html extension. What the .html extension does is pretty much tells us that this will be a page itself. You can, just by double clicking on it, you can view it in a browser. If you want to see how it looks, let's go ahead and minimize this, because we did save it onto our desktop. Let's see, where will be, here's test right here. I'm using Chrome as my default browser, so it would appear like this. You see this icon here, the Google Chrome icon. If you're using Internet Explorer, then an Internet Explorer icon should appear. If you're using Firefox, like as, the Firefox icon will appear. Let's go ahead and double click it, and that's how it will look at first. Just by having those 4 or 5 lines of code of just tags, you get a blank HTML page. If you want to add words, for example a heading, in HTML there are basically 6 heading types. There's H1, H2, H3, H4, and H5. With H1 being the largest and H6 the smallest. All the H tags H1 through 6 are often referred to as headings. That's what they're for. For example, let's just go ahead and call this my first web page. What this will do is this should write this on the page itself. As you may have noticed on some, let's save it first. Sorry about that. Let's save it first. You may have noticed that up here, some websites have their name and not the extension. You can easily change that. But if you want to see how it looks first, just press F5 and boom. Written, you can select it, just regular text. To change that, instead of making it say test.html, you can do this by using the title tag. The title tag should replace what is on the tab right there and just give it a name. Let's call it my first page. Closing title tag. Title tag. Alright, now let's see how this will look. F5 and see, look at that, it changed. Now then, if you would like to, let's say, change the color instead of having the text white and the back, that's like instead of the background white and the text black, you could reverse it by writing some style. What I like to do is, the current trend is instead of using internal style sheet and internal styles, like you could just do this, like opening style tag, type at well, you may notice that when you have a tag and then you something like an environment, like in Notepad++, it will color code. The tags will be blue. Attributes, which is what normally come after in the same tag as inside the style tag, right there next to it will become known as attribute. And what an attribute does, like the type attribute, you're pretty much defining it. Basically, it's like text/CSS. Let's not forget the closing. And if you don't close it with a little angle brace, it will treat the closing head tag as an attribute. And let's see, let's go and put in a little comment. Well, that pretty much, it won't do anything to the page. It's kind of like reminders, or you can use it as ways of telling you what the code does. Right now, you can do it like that, and then just add a couple, like maybe 3-4 lines of CSS code, and then you'll just style it. I like to refer to that as internal style sheets, or you can just paste the style inside the tags themselves. But what I like to do is, I like to open up a new document or a new tab in Notepad++, and let's go ahead and set the language, and we will be converting the language here to CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Cascading Style Sheet is what when you go surfing on the web and you see some types of colors, many different forms of font, many different kinds of text, how it looks differently, anything like that from normal. CSS basically does all that. Let's start off with styling the background color and changing the font color and reverse it like I said earlier. Let's just set up the basic. It's right here. Just gonna set up a few lines of code. You may notice that some of these lines of code are self-explanatory. And when creating a style sheet, I like to save it in a series of folders, like sort of a path to it. I like to create a folder known as assets. Inside the assets folder, you could have maybe a few more folders or other stuff, like for example an images folder, which will have all your images, and a styles folder. And as images folder holds all your images, the styles holds all your styles. And let's name this main. Okay? If you're going to go in an external style sheet, always remember to reference it. So that's how we reference it. Well, we use the link tag. Okay, you may notice something different here. With the link tag, you can see that I did not put in a closing tag for it. Instead, I just left this / / here inside the tag itself. And with design, that's referred to as an empty tag, which is what the link tag is, an empty tag. Okay, it does not require a closing tag because it itself is an opening and closing. What the rel attribute does, it's you're telling the browser of what you're trying to link to. Basically, you're linking to a style sheet, which pretty much explains this. Rel equals style sheet. You can see the double quotes. And when designing a web page, when you're using something like an attribute, which is what this is called, because Notepad++ pretty much kindly color codes everything. So attributes are red, and whenever you see an attribute, it'll be followed by an equal sign, and for an equal sign, normally a set of double quotes, and inside the double quote is something known as a value. For example, like right here, the type attribute, you're pretty much telling it what kind it is. Basically, CSS is just basically text code, but text nonetheless, /CSS. And href attribute, simply you're telling where you can find it. You're telling the browser where it is. You're pretty much telling it it's inside the assets folder. You go into the assets folder, go into the styles folder, and you can find main CSS right there. And let's go ahead and see how this looks. Refresh and check that out. Sorry about that. Alright, let's see. We could also, if you want, we could change up the styles a bit. You could get rid of the color property and white value, and we could style that h1 color white. And it's again, some of this is it's kind of like self-explanatory. Well, text align property, and you may notice this in CSS. Let's go bit by bit. In CSS, the first thing that should come up would be the selector, followed by an opening curly brace. And you can drop a line if you want. Right here, the property, followed by a colon, and then its value. And you end that line of code with a semicolon. And let's go ahead and save this. We'll take the line. What it should do is, it should take this line of text and center it. Check it out. That's in the middle of the page. You can do a lot of things with this. For example, if you want to have some fun with it, you could add like a width of maybe 250 pixels, because everything on the web is pixelated. So, and let's go with a height, and let's make it 100 pixels. And why am I adding a width and height? You may ask. Well, I'm going to add something like known as a border around it. Why am I going to add a border, you ask? Well, I like to have some kind of container. If that makes sense, any sense? Let's go with a 1 pixel solid white border. And let's see how this looks. Wow, really just took the lemon right off it. Well, basically, if you have it inside a container, it should just be centered inside that container. I can do it right there. Well, guys, thank you for watching. Once again, this is Burnell from oakraysweb.com.